Week 4 explores rent, housing justice, and community development struggles with Chiyi Tam.
Okay, welcome to class. I'm very excited for today's session. As you can see, it's rent, housing justice, and community development, and I can't think of a better person to have speak to us about this than Chiyi Tam, so I will share her bio. Chiyi is an urban planner and anti-displacement organizer practicing in Toronto's Kensington Chinatown neighborhood. Chiyi is the managing director of the recently established Toronto Chinatown Land Trust. And also I'm just going to add a graduate of the Masters in Urban Planning program from University of Toronto as well. So I've been teaching at U of T for the past, I think, 4 or 5 years now. And I've read your work, I've heard a lot about you, so I'm very glad to have her here with us today.
I'm very new to Toronto. I'm also a tenant and resident organizer. I went to planning school because I was frustrated with the housing system, which I'm sure is how you guys feel or have questions about it. So I'm here to share what I've basically found out since arriving. And a lot of the I'm sharing mainly 4 big stories with you guys. Hopefully they are motivating, hopefully they are revealing, hopefully they feel like they can be stories you can see similarities to from the neighborhoods you are connected to the neighborhoods I'm bringing the stories from. But none of these stories are mine because I'm new to this place. I'm from Vancouver. I'm from Vancouver's Chinatown, but I've been here for 4 years and I dived right into it, like deep into it right away. And when we went to the City of Toronto archives to look for Chinatown history, we found Chinatown history in St. Jamestown. We found Chinatown history in Regent Park. We found it connected to Cabbagetown when it was called South Cabbagetown Resident Association. There were pamphlets that we found in the city archives for them organizing against developers in Regent Park in 1921. Okay, we have never not been fighting for this neighborhood is what I've learned. And that is also true of Chinatown. And Chinatown used to be a lot closer over here. And so now, of course, there are 2, over only a stone's throw away, there is East Chinatown. And then much further away, the bigger one, we call it West Chinatown. So most of these stories are from West Chinatown because I got the chance to work with Kensington Market for a long time, with the Jazz Festival location. So I'll caveat it with that. And the first story that I find really different coming here and learning to work organizing in land, organizing in relationships with my neighbors and kind of figuring out what's going on is people tell stories about Indigenous land very differently here than how they teach us in the West Coast. Like in the West Coast, the cultures, the Indigenous cultures there are the Musqueam and the Squamish, and they believe that like we humans were created from the shell of a clam that was opened by a raven, which is so different because like I arrive here and then people immediately tell me that's not how the land was created. All of the land is actually a turtle's back. And a sky woman fell from the sky with the first seed of a plant around Lake Ontario, which we call Lake Ontario now, which is so different. And now I realize that's why we call it Turtle Island. But I've never heard of Turtle Island until I came over to you guys here.
Actually, when I studied here, I was taught by one of the Indigenous ladies.
Yeah.
She actually told me Toronto used to be called as a Turtle Island. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
You're telling me. It makes
But that's why. And so, but the reason I bring it up is because I now work exclusively on land. And in analyzing land, the clarity that story offers us is that when we understand the land as Turtle Island in relationship with the Sky Woman and this creation story, public narrative is going to be, like narrative and storytelling is very important because it conveys your values. If the story you are telling about the land is that it is property, it is real estate, and it is something you can charge rent for to profit over somebody else existing on that land, this becomes a very harmful and very scary and dangerous story. That's a very different story than this story of bounty of like, a pregnant woman falling out with like seeds in her pocket to offer and helpless. A helpless woman, and the animals and the land of this area saved her. and said, you know what, we are going to find a way to allow this human to survive here. That's such a different relationship with the land. And I'm really trying to get back there, which I feel like is the shared value. So let me bring this into the real estate problem that we are seeing in Kensington Market, and I really want to get away from that real estate story. Please use this if you would like to use it in your other leadership in community projects. I have a very limited amount of time with you guys, so I just have house rules that you can customize and use. Please just like take this framework. So sometimes people say when you're learning in a class that, yes? Yes, of course, yeah. So you can change this word if it's not as useful to the people you're working with, but in our time together, there's like your comfort zone, which is like your time at home with your family, with your friends. Everything you're saying with your friends is like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me, blah, 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 blah. It's just like sense making. You're just saying things that you already know that is comforting, and that's why we call it the comfort zone. When we are in class, when we're learning with each other, not everything is known to us, you would hope, or else you're learning nothing. So it's also therefore natural that we're not totally comfortable, which is also fine. So let's be really patient with ourselves. Like being outside of the comfort zone and in the learning zone is ideal, but it doesn't mean that we're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. Let's just all be very like trusting with each other, but don't go too far. So the thing I've learned about housing and rent and talking about it in class, it's a very vulnerable topic because it has to do with like our material everyday life. So I don't want us to go past the learning zone into the panic zone. And so many of you guys are involved with community, activation and programming. Hopefully this is useful to you. If you have a participant that really wants to share a personal experience they've had, my landlord kicked me out with a baseball bat, blah, 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 like I was evicted from my place with my kids. Like I have heard these kinds of testimonials. It's amazing. Like it's incredible when people do choose to share those struggle and difficult stories with you because you learn so much, but it costs them so much emotionally, to do that for you in the class. So I don't want to feel entitled to it. And sometimes some people go too far because they really, really want to participate and offer. Sometimes they neglect their own needs. And sometimes I describe this as like, you see people shutting down entirely, like going way beyond the amount of trust there is in the room. Like you don't have that much trust with me because you've just met me, with the exception of us, having spent some time previously. But you've just met me, so it's like, it's fine that you don't totally trust me, right? Like I should earn that. You also should earn that with me. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean with this framework. Hopefully it's useful. So I want it to guide our time together, but it also means that some common sense things like making sure that those stories that you do share are confidential. Some of the stories I'm bringing you are very precious to me, and I would not share them with another group. Like I don't share them with other planners. I don't share them with policymakers. Some of the stories that I brought today, I'm sharing because I know you are all like me. Like you guys are neighborhood-based community organizers. You're not people in huge positions of power that are, like neglecting us. We are like people building collective power. We're building collective narrative. One day we will get there. We will get into the room. But so I'm sharing stories that are precious, right? So that's why I ask for confidentiality. Please share the lessons you learned rather than the literal story. But also accepting non-closure means that we're not gonna get all the answers because we have limited time together. So yeah, take this slide wherever you go next. So what I brought for you guys, we did the intros, so we're gonna move into some Kensington Market and Chinatown neighborhood organizing history that I have brought for you. Just as stories, just to share. And then the third is specific strategies that we have learned now to resist the different moves that we see in the development and housing sector, that is the for-profit one. And then I've also brought to you CLT examples. CLT stands for Community Land Trust, which is what you saw in my title. So I manage voluntarily a community land trust, and I'll say more about what that is, but it's a kind of neighborhood controlled housing solution. We're not waiting for the government, we're not waiting for anything else to happen, we just want to do it now because our neighbors are getting evicted now. So after we go through the content, hopefully that takes us through the first like 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, And then I have about a 35-minute workshop for us to go through if we're interested in it, to develop your public narrative. It's a training that was offered to me that I found really useful, but I'll tell you more about it afterwards, and we'll see where we get in terms of time. Hopefully there's enough time for a break as well. Yeah, we'll get through it. So to say more about the relationship to land, these two signage projects are two different neighborhood organizing projects. The city would not have translated the road signs on their own, right? Like, why would they share power like this? To translate just some of the major streets into another language took a long, long time. It took folks, there was a version of the St. Jamestown Community Corner that existed early on in like 1940 something it established, and continues to run now. It's actually where Olivia Chow first became a summer intern to be a community ambassador as well, just like us. It was the University Settlement Community Center. They were doing English practice language classes, like very common, like a public library, with a bunch of moms. And they realized that there were some seniors that were just not ever going to be able to learn that much English. And they were really worried about them because their children were moving away from the downtown Toronto, and they were increasingly living alone in Chinatown. So they really were like, what would be really helpful is if we had a way to refer to the different places just for this one 5x5 block radius. So they fought for that. They fought for that for a very, very long time. I think it took them 8 years. And it really was just a group of mainly 8 women who were just like literally just random residents in Chinatown, not particularly like involved with, one organization or the other. They just kept on writing letters. They kept on pushing and pushing and pushing, and they just went ahead and drafted what it would look like, what the design would look like, without asking for permission, right? And then finally they did it. And so those signs have stayed. And this is a very recent, very new one. So the indigenous organizers that came out of an art collective renamed Spadina Up and Down. But so I think the missed opportunity here is it should be both. It should be the various many other languages in addition. So if everybody who comes to Toronto needs to learn how to pronounce Spadina, and it doesn't make any sense to anybody why we say Spadina instead of Spadina. But Spadina is correct. In Ojibwe, in the Anishinaabe indigenous language, Ishpadina is correct. That is the original Ojibwe. So we were right. The immigrants were right. CLTs. Let's define them first because I will keep on talking about them for the rest of the thing. Oh, have you ever heard of a CLT before I came? Because there isn't one on this side of town. There's a bunch on the west side, and we started organizing together. There is a community land trust in Parkdale. There is a community land trust in Kensington Market, and we just started one for Chinatown. Basically, it's when you get a group of people who live in a specific area. You can make that area as big or small as you want. So Ottawa, for example, has an Ottawa Community Land Trust. But in Toronto, we have such strong neighborhoods with different identity that like the, Greek town feels very different from Parkdale, feels very different from the beaches. So there's a neighborhood identity. So it makes sense that in Toronto, there are neighborhood land trusts. So it really just means that a bunch of people made a nonprofit and they use that nonprofit to own land together instead of on their own. So it's not like me and Aditi and Connie as 3 people put all of our names on the property. It's not like that. It's more like the 3 of us made a thing in the middle of us and that thing owns the property. So even if the 3 of us die or the 3 of us leave, moved somewhere else, that entity still controls the property. And then we elect somebody else to replace me, for example. Then you would get elected for my seat and blah, blah, blah. And that's how that thing stays community controlled. So this is a mechanism to make sure that nobody privately takes advantage of the property. And it's controlled not by the government and not by the bank, but by the community, right? This is a structure. The amazing thing is we have hundreds and hundreds of these in Toronto. secretly, quietly. You don't know. On top, there is a cooperative house on top, but underneath it, the land is held like this with a community land trust. And anybody can make one, so long as you have a big group, a neighborhood group, to make it together with you. Now, you can use the land for anything you want. You don't have to use the land just for housing. So here it says, you take the land off of the real estate market forever because you've put it in this thing now. That means that legally you cannot sell it again, which means that the value, the real estate value, is now irrelevant. It's gone. So because you can never sell it again, you get to just decide together what you want to use it for. So you could use it for a community garden. You could use it for a senior's retirement home. You could use it for a daycare. But people in Toronto are very interested in it right now because of the housing crisis, because it can hold housing. So that's why most of them focus on housing. But they could do anything else, honestly. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. No, I'll give you guys specific examples. When I learned about it, it blew my mind because I was like, well, why didn't they make Regent Park all phase 1 to 4, all of it a community land trust? And now they learned their lesson. So the neighborhood organizers in Bloor and Dufferin, there's a neighborhood group called Build Better Bloor Dufferin. There is a high concentration of geography and planning professors who live right at Bloor and Dufferin for whatever reason. They're all part of the U of T faculty. So a bunch of them. Yeah. So they also had like a high level of knowledge and skill as a resident group. So they have some kind of like knowledge privilege operating, but they understand that they need to neighborhood organize because they just saw what happened with Regent Park. And they were like, I cannot believe the government made that deal. At Bloor and Dufferin, there's a huge city-owned site as well. And they were like, are they about to make the same kind of deal with a private developer like they did with Regent Park for us? No. And guess what? They said, hey, we heard about a community land trust. And they did it. They made a part of that development a community land trust. So that neighborhood will now control and negotiated with the developer a portion of the units. And they got $2 million to start a new land trust from the developer. So once you know what to ask for, you can, back to the science, once you ask for it, you maybe, if you're annoying enough, can get it. So to give you an idea of what kind of change is happening in Chinatown, we have like a more organic real estate effect happening. Okay, so I'm showing you pictures of the same building. So if you have been on Spadina, you may have noticed this building before, or if you work in homelessness services, you might recognize that this is the new site of the Scott Mission. So that is its original form in the colonial era. It was built as a Jewish union temple. So a lot of the seamstresses worked for less money than white. So women were seamstresses in this garment factory area of Toronto. But if you were Jewish, you earned 2 cents less than the white women. And if you were not white, i.e. you were Chinese or you were from anywhere else, you earned 5 cents less than even the Jewish women. So they started organizing. They were like, okay, well, this is clearly not a thing. We hate this. So they banded together, and their union became much stronger over the years, and they had enough money to build themselves a building. And this building was really lovely. They hosted dances in there for each other. They did more union organizing in there. There was a very famous organizer named Emma Goldman from the Lower East Side of New York. She was forced to leave New York because she was too effective at her community organizing, and capitalism was very scared of her. So she was in exile in Toronto, and she died here, actually. She laid in state, and many people from across North America came here to honor her, and her body laid there. But unfortunately, that is also why Chinatown thinks that this building is cursed. So it is said that her ghost haunts the second floor women's washroom, if you're ever in this building, okay? So then the Jewish community successfully assimilates out of Kensington Market. At this era, they then sell it to the Chinese community, and it's turned into a banquet hall. It had a discount store downstairs, very affordable, thrift stores, and upstairs it was a huge seafood restaurant, like huge, 2 floors. It could seat 600 people. So you have weddings in there, you know, like it's just like a typical community banquet center, and then it becomes this. whatever this is, like in 2015. And this gets bought by a real estate group who wants to create a high-end gallery in order to attract high-end customers to come and buy their luxury real estate and use it, the downstairs as a showroom and the upstairs as a gallery, thereby kicking out all of this very community-oriented history that this building has. They cursed themselves, though, because there were these two guardian lions that are very typical of Chinese buildings. So usually there's two. They took away only one when they made the building this ugly black and white thing. So they cursed themselves. They kept one lion there, and they were never able to find a tenant for 5 years after they made it look like this ugly black and white box. And the ghost is probably haunting the building. So when we're talking about like gentrification and neighborhood change in Kensington Market and Chinatown, this is like literally what it looks like. It means that the neighborhood change is not culturally competent. Like, look, there's culture being expressed with the exterior of this building. There is no personality with this building. There's no way you can convince me that this building is better, like it's providing more value to the community than these two versions of the building. But of course, to the real estate market, this provides more value because you could make more money out of it. Yes. Except that they didn't because it was haunted. So this is, in case you're interested, just as a fun fact, just like as an architecture history thing, Chinatowns don't always look like these kinds of buildings. In North America, this style is actually very rare in Toronto. But if you go to any other Chinatown in North America, the New York one, the San Francisco one, the Vancouver one, there will be more buildings that look like this. But this was the last one. This was the last one in the west side of Toronto that had this kind of facade. And then on the east side, we only have the gates. There is no building on the outside that actually has this kind of like cultural specific expression. But there are no buildings in China that look like this, okay? It is a, I call it Orientalist architecture because it's actually a kind of architecture strategy that came out of racism. So this is a strategy that you can decide whether or not your community wants to adopt. I'll tell you the story. So it's the Chicago World Fair. It's like 1880 something. Every country, the way a World Fair works, every country submits a pavilion, right? The pavilion of the Americas, the pavilion of Colombia, the pavilion of Italy, whatever it is. And everybody builds a building to represent their culture and their country at a World Fair. The Chinese government at the time is the imperial royal government of the Qing dynasty. They're protesting all of the Western world because they're infiltrating China with opium. So they're like, we don't want to do any external trade because we cannot trust the Western world. Fair. But the problem is, at the same time, there are actually Chinese and Asian people living in North America who felt unrepresented because there was not going to be an expression of their culture in the World Fair, and they were facing a lot of racism. And so they were like, well, a good way to make white people less scared of Chinese people is to make them understand our culture, promote our arts, blah, blah, blah. So actually, a group of Asian American architects made up this kind of structure that is not a reference to anything. It's just a kind of way to make themselves seem not threatening. To make it like a Disneyland for white people so that, you know, like your community is not scary, is not so foreign to them, is not so exotic. Or if it's exotic, it's not threatening. So the strategy works. This is how I know it works. San Francisco burns. The entire San Francisco city burns down from a great fire. This is a very famous fire that happened in like the early 20th century. This is what the Chinatown looked like before. It was just normal buildings. There was nothing about it that made it look Chinese-y. After the fire, all of these buildings burned down because it was part of the downtown part of San Francisco. The San Francisco government was like, how convenient. What a great way to just revitalize Chinatown and get rid of all the Chinese people. Because they had never wanted Chinatown to be there in the first place. And so they were going to just use the fire as an excuse to just not rebuild Chinatown, and then there will be no way for Chinese people to come back. It was very, It's exactly the same. They tested these methods. Exactly what happened here. It's like, oh well, if we destroy the neighborhood, then all the poor people will conveniently go away, right?
And that's why they did that.
Exactly. Thank goodness the neighborhood was organized enough. The story is that the neighborhood is organized enough that they say, hey, you know those guys who just submitted that building to the Chicago World Expo? That was really popular with the white people. What if we promise the white people that we build them fun Disneyland-looking Chinese architecture in Chinatown, and then make it really nice for them to come and like eat this like Chinese food that doesn't exist in China either. Let's like make these like orange chicken, General Chow's chicken, all these things. They don't exist. They don't exist in China. They are dishes that were made to appease the people in power. It is a strategy that worked. The reason why Chinatowns around North America still exist today, 200 years later, is because this strategy worked for us. It was like appealing to make ourselves less scary to them, that we're not going to steal all their jobs. This did not work in Toronto. Unfortunately, Toronto successfully completely destroyed its first Chinatown. First Chinatown is sitting underneath Nathan Phillips Square. This was Chinatown. They used the building. This is the old City Hall. There's nothing wrong with the old City Hall. It's still functioning. You could still use it. They used this as an excuse to get rid of Chinatown. This is wild. But Chinatown is not just for Chinese people, right? In the context of Chinatown, you have indigenous folks who white people can't tell apart, and so they're like, oh, you look similar enough, you're Asian. And Chinatown, the word China comes from a time when people used to say Chinaman, right? People used to say Chinaman to refer to indigenous folks, to refer to all East Asian folks, and this used to also be called the ward. So there was a huge concentration of black folks who lived with Chinese folks, because where did you live if you were marginalized from the system? So it was just so convenient to be able to just wipe away all of the visible problem, right, from that perspective. You can see like how large this area is. It's wild. It's wild how much they redeveloped. And so there is a version, like this is just a machine. The machine keeps on doing this over and over again. They just target heavily racialized neighborhoods, create projects, big revitalization and infrastructure projects. They've literally done this for 200 years, constantly. And it's not like the neighborhood didn't fight back, right? These are posters from when they proposed the City Hall meeting. These are neighborhood organizing posters, just like the posters that you guys would make right now, I would make right now. This is Jean Lum with a loudspeaker going up and down the street with her child, Arlene Chan. She's now the leading historian of Chinese Canadian archives. Jean Lum has a street named after her in Chinatown now, but even she was not able to save Chinatown. Those meetings in 1964 completely packed. They completely packed City Hall, and still City Hall expropriated all of those buildings and refused to have a community consultation process or public engagement process.
But it still doesn't work though.
It still doesn't work even if there's an engagement process. But the strategy that I think does work is just putting yourself in the position of power. I don't know if you guys have heard of this guy. His name is William Hubbard, Peyton Hubbard. Have you heard of his name? Hubbard Street's named after him. So he's from, his house is on Riverdale, if you ever want to look at his big fancy house. First black mayor of Toronto. Wild story how he becomes his story is incredible. Like he saves the life of like the Globe and Mail chief editor or something, like randomly in an incident, and then is introduced to all these people. So one thing, he's a hero for many reasons. He's very legendary in Toronto's history, but he means something to Chinatown specifically. There was a strategy before they thought of the strategy to just build City Hall. There was a strategy to propose laundry business fines or license fees. All the laundries were all operated by Chinese people because they told Chinese people, you can only operate laundries. You can only do this business or restaurant business. So by creating a license fee for laundries, they effectively are creating a license for just Chinese people, right? But it's not racist because they're calling it a laundry fee. This laundry fee was $50, which was a lot of money in old money, right? William Hubbard he was not mayor at the time, but he was the only person who spoke up against it because he understood that it was racist. But he was also the only non-white member of city council, right? He's a legend because he got it significantly reduced. He wasn't able to fight to completely remove it, but he was able to get it significantly reduced. And so he's a hero in Chinatown very specifically. And that's like a kind of like just racial solidarity story that like is constantly shared. The strategy then is to just elect ourselves. Is to just get ourselves in the room. That's one strategy, one out of like many other strategies that have come about.
What's his background?
His background? I think he's an inventor. He's like a tinkerer. He has like a couple of patents for inventing some machines, yeah, before he got into politics. So we define gentrification very specifically. Sometimes we use the term neighborhood change more broadly, but you do have to be specific about class because people are always like, oh, all neighborhoods change, cities change all the time. But to be able to advocate for what the problem is, you have to get very specific. And so we have learned over time that you have to use a very specific definition, which is upper income groups displacing working class residents. That's the kind of change we're concerned about. I'm not talking about like you installed more flower pots and it became prettier and that's the neighborhood change. That's not what I'm complaining about. But they think that's what I'm complaining about. They're like, but we're making Chinatown prettier. Why do you have a problem with this? This is 315 Spadina. This is what it looked like. Now it's a construction site because this is going ahead, it's getting built. But we did get the largest concessions that have ever been gotten out of a neighborhood change, out of like a neighborhood proposal. So it's 13 stories, it's all market rate rentals, no affordable housing units like in it originally. There was nothing about this one-story building. There was even a couple of residential units here. But every single business you could go into and you don't need to speak English. Like that's why it's so accessible, right? Like this Vietnamese bakery, this meat supply store, this dim sum restaurant, this DVD store, there's an optometrist, there's a medical services in there, right? We call this culturally competent service, right? Like there are people driving from Kingston, from all over the place into Chinatown because you're looking for a guy who can speak specifically your language to help you specifically with your problem. So the city had no framework to understand why this optometrist is not like any other optometrist for us to be able to convey the value. So we had to invent this term, culturally competent businesses. 315 Spadina was filled with only culturally competent businesses, basically. There's nothing about this building that didn't already serve the community need. And if we, as a community, owned this building and had decided what we wanted to do with this lot, yes, we agree we need more housing, we probably would have gently built housing on top of it, affordable housing on top. But why? Why would we need to get rid of any of them? They're incredible, they're beautiful. So this, when they tell me that this is making Chinatown prettier, the first thing they offered us when we said we're not happy with this, the first thing the developers offered us was, okay, we can do something for you. We can give you a mural on the side of the building. We'll make sure we hire an Asian artist.
So they're not, what is it gonna do?
What's it gonna do? I was like, give me affordable housing units. So they now have to give us 20. They make applications, these notices go up when they're asking to deviate from it as well. When they're trying to say like, oh, but we're doing all these other things. We gave you money to build a swimming pool, so let us off the hook for this other thing. Let me give you money for this thing so I can make more money doing this thing, right? They're just constantly doing these little like trading things. There is a new framework.
But that
There's a new.
people doesn't understand that.
People don't understand this, but it's deliberately obscure. This is why I had to go to planning school to actually figure it out. It was crazy. Every project is negotiating behind doors with specific community organizations. And the problem is not all of our neighborhood community organizations are talking to each other about the deals we're getting. So this is the thing we're learning now. Now there is a West End Coalition for Housing Justice. There's also a neighborhood Zoom call now to be like, hey, Regent Park, what's happening over there? Hey, St. Jamestown, what's happening over there? Well, this is what we heard up on the junction. So people, unfortunately, this takes a lot of time to be talking across the neighborhoods, but we have to be sharing this information of being like, you're talking to Daniels over there? Well, Daniels just gave us this over there on the junction. Like this kind of information sharing, absolutely critical, absolutely critical. We were taught how to do this. The red sign is ours. It looks so official, doesn't it? They put this notice up on the side of the building, on the behind, and so nobody could actually see it. So then we made a version and said, hey, something is happening, get in touch. And then also we translated our own one because the city refused to create a translated version. I'm telling you, in the city of Vancouver, they have it translated into Bengali, into Chinese, into Vietnamese, into like literally every major diaspora, the top 8 spoken languages in Vancouver. All of your public notices have to be translated into all of them. And if you don't have enough space to accommodate that in the design, you have to have a sentence at the bottom in all of the languages that says, this is an important notice, please ask someone to translate it for you in all of those languages. So look, me moving to Toronto in 2019 and being like, I'm sorry, what, we only do things in English here? How far behind is this city? Toronto is Canada's biggest city. I'm coming from Vancouver. You're telling me that you've never translated a sign ever? Not even to French? Never. Not into any other language. So we forced them. This was the first time they did it. But because again, we put up our own sign. So it's just like, basically the strategy that we've learned is don't wait for them to do it. Just do it yourself.
That's it.
Yeah, this poster only cost us $60 to print because the printer guy thought it was funny. So he gave us a discount. So this sign stayed up. We talked to a lot of the seniors and the community members living around the area as they passed by. We did video interviews with them. We went very viral on Instagram, etc. It was so viral that when the developer finally had to have their public meeting, they didn't have enough space for all of the hundreds and hundreds of people that we were able to move. And I'm really proud of this because a lot of the neighborhood organizing is done by aunties and uncles. It's really done by people like, I would say like in their late 30s to 50s. And a lot of people who are retired because they have time. Yes?
And they have trust within themselves.
Yes, they have the confidence in themselves. They're like, you know what? I'm 40. Like I've seen life happen.
So if I put here,
Yeah.
you will trade me and you will put the money in the pocket.
Interesting analysis of who does this. But I think something we're really proud of is a lot of these folks are younger and they've never thought that they could come to community meetings, right? They're like, oh, my mom tells me to go to the community center all the time, but I never do. And so when we told them that Chinatown was under attack, and we're like, you need to show up for Chinatown. I know you've never shown up for anything. Every family gathering, you're like, no, I don't want to go Chinese New Year, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, you have to come to this. So they came. Everybody came, and they completely packed all of the rooms. The developers were so scared. Like, they were actually shaking. Like, you could see them physically shaking in the meeting. So they then were forced to negotiate with us, and that's how we got the 20% of affordable units. That's how we got a first right of return for all of the commercial tenants. We also did our own research, right? We were like, you clearly don't have any of the answers. The city of Toronto doesn't have any answers. The developer's not going to give us an answer. So we called Boston's Chinatown. We called New York's Chinatown. We called a bunch of other people, be like, what ideas have you guys done? Like, what have you done? Like, what have you done? And then we told a bunch of planning students to go and do a scan of like, what could we ask for? And so we learned we could ask the developers to invent, and again, never done in Toronto before, a first right of refusal policy. So when the building is finished construction, all of those businesses must be offered the units first before they can be advertised. No one's apparently asked a developer for this, but the developer was like, oh, that costs us nothing. You're helping us find the tenants again. That's amazing. Yeah, we'll agree to that. So it's like sometimes you just like don't know what to ask for, and if you ask, they'll give it to you. So this is the last story I'll tell you, which is I think a story that you also probably know really well. The annoying thing that happens, maybe we made it too nice. So Chinatown Center Garden is completely abandoned. It's like in very bad shape. Like, I don't know if we have a photo, like that's what it looked like. It just existed like that for like 5 years, 6 years, like complete disrepair. The mall wouldn't fix it because the Vietnamese uncles didn't want to work with the Cambodian uncles because they didn't want to talk to each other. So it was like a bunch of uncles were being annoying. That's fine. And then externally, the city of Toronto was like, no, it's private property. We don't want to give you a grant. We don't want to do anything. And so for people who love the neighborhood, the younger folks, we were like, you know what? We're just going to do something. We're just going to do it. We're not going to ask for permission. We're just going to do the thing. Yeah, we were like, well, we love Chinatown, and we don't want Chinatown to be just like known as this place where, you know, it's dirty, it's ugly, whatever.
You said it's private property.
It's private property.
And you didn't ask permission?
No, we just did it. We tried. We really tried to ask permission. And in the end, the answer that the mall, because the mall is a condo, It's very confusing. The stores are in a condo with each other. So imagine trying to get any decisions made when every store has one vote over the mall. Nobody wants to spend money on anything. They don't want to spend money, extra money, because it turns into management fees, right, for them, for the mall. So in the end, they said, it's fine, you go ahead and do it. Just don't like ruin my store, basically, is more or less what the ones that were willing to talk to us did. So we turned it into a really nice garden. We like those same people who showed up for the meetings. They were like, oh, what else can we do? Now I care about Chinatown for the first time in my life. Then we were like, okay, let's make it. And then we started hosting events here. So you can see people learning how to play mahjong over there. People did storytelling events, and it was so cute. It was so nice. It was so like classic neighborhood, community, health, like blah, 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 festival feelings. Immediately it ruins it. Immediately somebody decides, oh, they've made it into an event space. Immediately there is a lawyer that operates on the second story here. She's outside of the view. She immediately is like, oh, what if I like made a fence here and started charging tickets for it? What if I started charging money for the venue? And she started hosting these like comedy nights. And it's just amazing. It's amazing that someone can find a way to make money off of a community thing or a public land immediately, the moment you make it nice. So it's so hard. It's so hard to ask the city to come and fix the roads, to come and add flower pots, to make the benches nicer, to make our park nicer. Because we know that if we do make it nicer, immediately rich people will want to make money off of it. Like it just keeps on happening over and over again in all these different small ways. We were able to finally fight her off. She now only is able to use this at the nighttime, and otherwise it's a community space. But it's just like, it's so interesting because this doesn't involve any developers. This doesn't involve anything else. It's just completely inside the community, right? This kind of community neighborhood change that's happening. Oh, sorry, this is the fourth story. I'm so sorry. I promise this is where it ends. This is the building that I was able to buy with Kensington Market Community Land Trust. So this is the story. There are 12 residential units in there. There are 3 guys who have been living in this building for over 25 years. The guy who's been living in there the longest, he's lived there since 1970 something, so 1972, which means that the rent he has paid has never really increased, only increased the legal limit, right, every year, because he knows his rights. So he pays for a studio unit, not this nice, his isn't renovated, but the same size, for a studio unit in the middle of Kensington Market. He pays under $500 a month.
Wow.
Because that's just how much the rent was in 1972, and it hasn't changed. His rent hasn't changed because he's been able to stay there. This is what housing security is, right? It's like, okay, I love that for him. I'm so jealous. I want that for everybody. Like, I want that for me. So the only way to keep that is to protect his lease. So then they find out in 2018 that a bunch of new guys have bought the building. A bunch of new guys bought the building for $2.8 million. They immediately are like, oh, let's kick everybody out. Because they're not making enough money. They bought the building for $2.8 million. If every unit is only paying $500, they're not even paying the mortgage they took out in order to buy the building. So of course their business plan that they told the bank they were gonna do is renovate all of the units, which means renovict all of the units. So they gave these letters to everybody on the door. This is what you were talking about. People don't know. People don't know their rights. They made these letters that look so official because there's a letterhead on top. There's like an address. There's all these things, and it says notice of moving or something like that. But it's not actually legal. Like it's just a nice little thing they typed up on their computer and printed, and then they served it to all 12 of those units. 6 of them were like, oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, of course, this is so official looking. They immediately found another place to live because they're working so many jobs, they don't have time. Like if they have a lead on somewhere else, they just go. So before the neighborhood even found out about it, 6 of the units had already decided, okay, this is too much bother. I don't want to deal with this landlord. They're telling me I need to leave, I'm leaving. The other 6 guys are the old timers, and they're like, wait. I don't think I need to leave. I don't think this looks like the thing that legally they serve me. And so they immediately start texting. They start texting all of the other neighbors that live nearby, and suddenly there's a group text chain of like 37 people. This group text chain, I swear, like this group text chain has someone who is 80 years old on it and somebody who is 14 years old on it. And they all just live close to each other. And they're like, hey, they're telling us that the move date has to be September 1st. I need to work that day. Can you like just be nearby? Or can you like sit in my house and like refuse to leave? And so they did that. They took shifts. They were like one person was like, hey, I'm off of school. I'm just gonna study in your house. I'm just gonna sit on your couch. And so there was no opportunity for the landlord to come and take all their stuff out of the unit while they were at work, because the neighborhood watched for them. Like they each just like decided to never leave the unit. This strategy worked. So the guys who bought this building, who thought it was gonna be so easy to get rid of everybody, they failed. Their business plan failed. And in the end, the city councilor, we were able to write letters to their office to be like, this illegal eviction is happening, blah, 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 you need to come stop it. He came, the city councilor himself came to convince the rest of the residents that they didn't need to leave and they should fight it. And then all of the other neighbors also, every time they saw the guys who bought the building, would harass them. They would just catcall them and be like, hey, you just bought 54, didn't you? You think you're so fine coming into Kensington Market, you don't know where you are. You be careful where you walk at night. Like literally just like the neighborhood strength was like, we all know each other's business. You're new here. You be careful where you walk, because I heard that you're threatening my friends that live in 54. Like this really was the strength of tenant organizing. And those guys got scared. They gave up. They fully gave up, but not before they were able to successfully renovate some of the units. So their business plan was to turn the whole building into a weed hotel, because weed had just been legalized, and Kensington Market obviously has like Afro-Caribbean history, has all of these like famous lounges and illegal operations previously that have now been turned legal. And so obviously the people who were criminalized for marijuana for so many years are not the people that are now profiting over it. Now there's other people who are like, oh, now that it's legal, I'm gonna find ways to make money off of it. So it's two things at once. It's Airbnb, short-term rentals, kicking out long-term rentals, and the like not helpful, not redistributive effects of legalizing a drug coming into our neighborhood at once. And so they installed security cameras, installed all those things. But in 2021, they finally gave up on their business plan because they could not kick out those original residents. They put the building up for sale. And then when they put the building up for sale, that text chat of 37 people in the neighborhood had become a text chat of 70-some people on a Facebook group. They like made a Facebook group for each other, and everybody was like, hey, did you hear? The guys put the building up for sale. And then everybody was like, let's make a community land trust and buy the building. And they did. They hired me. I was still a planning student at this time. I'm just like doing this in theory. Like I'm like, I've never actually worked as a planner yet, but if you want me to do it, I'll do it. And they're like, we can't afford to hire like a professional planner, but you're good enough. You'll do it. You're gonna figure this out for us.
How did you survive? Did it kill you?
In 2 weeks, we had bought the building. I was just project managing. I had the other community land trust teach me. I like called them. I was like, Parkdale, I heard that you have bought a rooming house. I heard you bought a 32-unit rooming house. You wanna teach me how to do that? Like, but be very clear, step by step. And I called them every day to be like, how do I talk to a bank? How do I ask for a mortgage? How do I do this thing? How do I incorporate a thing? And then in 2 weeks, the building was ours. And the guys who fought that eviction became my boss, because they got elected onto the board that controls the building. And now they're trying to buy the other buildings in the neighborhood to stop other ones from happening. That's literally how that happened. It's wild that that happened. It's so unlikely, because in order to pay for it, that city councilor who remembered coming to defend the tenants 2 years before, he was like, oh, I remember this building. I was in it with you guys. We were like, do you have any money? We just asked, and he was like, actually, yeah. Actually, yes, I just got $3 million from a developer from another project because we negotiated community benefits on it. And yeah, we could hypothetically use that $3 million to buy this building. So the rest of the money, $3 million wasn't enough to buy this building at this point. The rest we just took out a loan from the bank and told the bank our plan is to operate it as affordable housing. This is how much rent we're gonna pay ourselves into it. And all the guys who are like, they understand that their rent now goes into the nonprofit that owns it. The rent doesn't now go to like some guys who are just not doing any maintenance. The rent now goes and pays into their maintenance. And they get to decide which plumber we're gonna hire, which electrician is gonna come. We didn't trust that guy, we didn't like him last time, let's get a different one. Like, you have more control because you still kind of own the building. You've become a landlord yourself, right? And I think this is what like we've decided in the end is that, okay, let's skip this. In the end, what we decided is that, wait, my slides are out of order. I wanna talk about community control. It's like ultimately, the only way to have total housing security is to just own the property, right? Because now we've made indigenous land into private property, that's just a reality. Until we have a future revolution situation where the private property market doesn't exist, we have to operate in this reality. So a real estate problem needs a real estate solution. And this is the theory of the community land trust, is if the tenants get together and buy the buildings, then we have total community control. Okay, so basically the accountability comes from the membership structure. So there are bad land trusts. They're called golf courses. They're called conservatories or trust funds, right? Like when you think about it, private members only organizations exist all over the place. They're clubs, they're yacht clubs, whatever. And they create those organizations to hold land to exclude people, not to include people. The difference that a community land trust has is its membership. So public benefit is defined as the land has to benefit low income people, right? So you can't say, oh, we've decided that our community benefit is playing golf and that's our priority. So we wanna use the land for playing golf and nothing else. And actually only this many people are allowed to play golf at a certain time. Like that's like very close in the way you structure it. The one difference is who that benefit is for. So it's legally in the like legal restrictions. And so each year we're audited by an independent person. All nonprofits in Canada have to do this. And so you get audited and then you report back to the members, and the membership has to be open. So it means anybody can become a member, not only if they can pay $50,000 to become a member or something like that. The last way that this happens is the accountability thing. Back to the cooperative and raising the rent example. Some cooperatives have really struggled because they have not been able to raise the rent in amongst themselves, because everybody is self-interested. And we rely on your self-interest to hold the community together. So the community land trust understands that you will always vote according to what benefits you. So if we call a vote, a community land trust does not just have one membership class. This is how we are very different from cooperatives or from residents associations. So those groups, all of the members live in the building, or all of the members are property owners. It's like one type of membership. A community land trust always has at least 3 memberships. One membership for people who live in the building, one membership for people who live around the building, not in the building, and one membership for like professionals and organizations and city officials, like experts to kind of help with the operation. So if you have a vote and you're like, we want to raise the rent by $500 slowly over the course of the next 5 years, and we want you to vote to approve it, most people who are part of the resident membership will vote against it if they're completely self-interested. Yes. But then you have the other 2 membership classes at the meeting, and they're like, guys, I understand. None of us can afford the rent right now. We're all struggling, I understand. But the building will fall apart if you decide to do that. So I can't let you decide to do that. I'm gonna vote for it. And that's how the accountability happens, because the decision-making is shared and balanced with more than one interest group, as we call it, more than one community interest group. But what we don't want is the interest group to only be developers, basically, in control of the land. So when you go to, let's say, the Chinatown website, this is the Chinatown Land Trust. You click on the button, become a member, and then you like read all of this like information. It's like la 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 la. And here you can see there's different types of memberships. The first one is community membership. It costs you $8 a year. The second one is supporter membership. So if you're like one of the organizations, the experts, the professionals that are not part of the member. And then the third one you cannot sign up for, because the third one, you just are one if you live inside one of the buildings. So you can't just apply to suddenly become a person that lives in the building. So you can apply for the other two that are available to people outside. And then every single organization looks different. So if you go to the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, their website, oh sorry, this is so small, but you can see like, get involved, become a member. So when you this is Parkdale, for example. So Parkdale has, who's organizing the Filipino Regent Park? They have a Filipino Tagalog speaking specific community because of the concentration of Filipinos that live in Parkdale. So you can see core member, community member, organizational member, supporter member. So they have 4, but the minimum is like more than 2, basically. So usually it's 3. And you fill out the form and you become, so in this one, all membership is free because Parkdale, that's how they decided they want to make their decisions. So it's up to you. It's up to you to decide what kind of memberships you create. Yeah, community land trusts don't have a membership restriction because it costs you time to get involved. So you're offering more than the organization can deliver back. It's really like, if you're willing to take on the work to do the decision making, because there's so much information, like the engineers' reports, the architecture reports, so you're putting so much time into helping make that decision that, yeah, it's incredible, so yeah. So I go to planning school, and I basically learn how to read all of these legal documents and wade through all of the super boring, truly boring city council meetings, committee meetings. I'm like, this is basically what she's in school for, this map. I also did this for homework. The interesting thing that I'm very frustrated with planning school and architecture school, you train all these planners, they go work for City Hall, they're now negotiating across from you the table when there's a development proposal like Regent Park going up. The planners that work on Regent Park are completely complicit in this. The problem with becoming trained as a planner is I think it distances me from my community knowledge. It puts me closer to like this university colonial knowledge, and it makes me start thinking like them. The questions that they don't ask is really interesting. So nobody who's a professional planner in the city would decide to make this map. What I've done is I was trying to prove a point. I was like, it feels like Chinatown is under attack. You can't convince me that that's not true. It feels like we get more development proposals than other parts of Toronto. It feels like the dots, each one of these dots is a development proposal, is a private developer putting a proposal in to do some kind of major waiver from deviating from what is just legally allowed as of right. And I was like, if you just look at the concentration of dots and where it happens, I just think something suspicious is happening. And what we have done, visualized, is this black border is what the City of Toronto defines as the downtown growth area. They called it the downtown plan, but it's a growth plan. It's a plan to induce more development and higher buildings into it. They want more investment. But it's not like everything inside the black border is just free zone for the developers to play. All of the areas that are green are protected. You cannot develop there. There's a heritage status over it. So it's unequal then. The growth pressure you are forcing onto the downtown core is therefore uneven. And now I can prove it. You have made a downtown plan while there are already existing protected heritage areas that you have already gone ahead and protected. Those are basically all white people historical areas. They're like buildings with the columns and whatever it is. Chinatown is in a gap. The other one, green one, is not actually active. It's under study. It's the Kensington Market one. Kensington Market is also not protected. So this development pressure goes into the gap where there is no green space, basically, is what I'm telling you. The purple areas are like, they have a specific idea for how they want that growth to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And we tried to make this point of like, there's nothing about neighborhood change that is organic, that is like happening naturally on its own because of immigration numbers, because of all of these like other policies. Like the way they are forcing the city to change is deliberate, intentional, and planned. It's planned. They are shaping how the city is going to be forced to have development pressure, and it's not like it's just like supply and demand happening organically on its own. Some places will have more development pressures because they are marginalized, because their neighborhoods are not as organized, because more poor people who don't have time to listen to all of the city council meetings are living in them, and blah, 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 blah. That's why those places will get more displaced than others. This is my theory. You don't have to agree with this theory, but this is the argument I'm making, right? Because now we've been able to show it in a map. And I can take that map to city council and be like, I proved it. I think one of the stories that I've learned from the organizers from Kensington Market and Chinatown is you can't actually waste all your energy fighting. Or we've actually said no more consultations. We're not going to attend any more city consultations. We don't want to go to any of them anymore. And if they do, like, it's like, send me an email. Send me an email, what information do you want? And how are you going to prove to me that after you ask me, it's going to affect your decision? If you can't prove to me that you asking my opinion is going to do anything about the decision you're going to make, then forget it. Like, I don't want to bother. This is why they did the community land trust. Because they were like, you can only fight every proposal and people coming into your neighborhood one at a time so many times. You will become exhausted. And so we were like, we want to build something ourselves. We want something that is on our timeline that we can generate slowly, invest, and build and shape with care and not be rushed constantly into the urgency that the real estate market is operating after. Yeah, the thing I've learned about fighting and city politics is the politicians cannot contain the solution in their head. They are talking to so many different people every day because they have too many constituents. So you need to present a solution for them. You're like, actually, I've already gathered all the people. I figured it out. Here's like, I packaged it all nice. I just need you to sign it. Just fund it. Just give the money to it. Don't like forget about it. So you just need to do the work for them, unfortunately, because you're doing the work for yourself. Yeah. I'm going to talk about the technique I was going to teach you guys, which is like an actual applied technique. I use this in my work. It's called public narrative. So it's a political device. So it's back to being persuasive as a strategy. Public narrative training was invented by a professor named Marshall Gantz based on his own organizing knowledge. He was an organizer initially, most famously with the civil rights movement in the States. The civil rights movement in the States is referring to getting the vote for Black folks. This is like in the 1960s. This is like Southern US versus Northern US politics. Like it's a whole other political context. So it's very American in its origin story, but a lot of community organizers have used it in their day-to-day practice. And of course, because it's a storytelling tool, it has become useful for politicians as well. So the people that are most famous for doing this very well are Obama. He was literally a student of Marshall Gantz. And I am 1 degree of separation from Marshall because my thesis supervisor was Marshall Gantz. On this? You did as well? That's so cool. So like, he's just been very influential in and has offered this knowledge very generously. So you can actually take yourself through, it's a Harvard course, but you can take yourself through the entire thing on YouTube for free. There are 5 versions of it on the internet. It's called, wait, where is it? Let me just pull the slide up.
Yes, when Kayla sends the
Public narrative.
each week, I will make sure she includes Marshall again.
Who's Marshall?
So if you prefer the written version instead of audio, because like listening to English is sometimes harder than reading English, you can take yourself through my slides. I copied basically the worksheet version of developing your public narrative. Basically, the argument is this. In order to persuade people to work with you, to be part of the revolution or whatever community organizing you're trying to do, you need to inspire action. But action is very difficult to inspire if you are making people scared, if you are creating fear, if you're creating anxiety. Those are not the emotions that are going to motivate somebody to sustain a long-term community relationship with you. If you can actually motivate someone on a basis of shared values, of a feeling connectedness with you and your story, and seeing how similar your story is to something that they care about and value, then that's sustainable. That's actually a relationship. That's a conversation between you two that will continue. And so basically, it's how to tell a story about yourself in a way that is effective. Because sometimes when you're asked to introduce yourself, blah, 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 or, hey, please give a presentation or give a speech, you can do a 5-minute version of this, you can do a 50-minute version of this. If you use this broad structure, it will be much more clear, it will be much more impactful, and people don't always remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel, right? Like when you come away with it, you don't like all the theory, all the stuff and the details. You can look it up later from your notes, but you're like, oh, you know, that person, that auntie is really amazing. I can't explain what it is, but she just made me feel so at home. You want people to say that about you. You can do that on purpose, actually. So they basically structure it into, you develop your story of self. You tell a story about yourself. In Obama's case, it's like, I was raised by a biracial couple, a white woman, and my father I never knew, but I went to Africa to go figure out my roots. He like fully did the whole thing. He's like, here's my story of self. Here's how I was called into leadership. I felt so motivated and then blah, blah, blah. The story of us comes after that usually in the way they tell the story, which is to say, here is what I know you care about. You're in this ACL course because you're connected to some mode of community that is larger than yourself. That's a huge commitment. I can make a bunch of assumptions about all of us in this room because it takes time to be randomly here from 6 to 8 o'clock. There's something in common about you guys that is caring enough, just a little more than the average person in Regent Park. So probably if I was doing this, I would do something about that shared value that we all care about neighborhood and something bigger. Story of now is what is the crisis now between us? And I did that in my presentation. I was like, here is the nightmare of what's going to happen. The nightmare is around us. There's condos everywhere. But the further nightmare for Regent Park is there's no semblance of community left. Not even the community space that we are in now. That was so hard fought for. But the dream is then what you want to end on. The story of now, which is, but if you do something with me, then you make a call for action. You end the whole entire speech that you give or the storytelling you're giving, like, but if you vote, yes, we can, or something like that, like blah, 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 blah. But basically you can do this in detail. So it's a step-by-step instruction. And the really useful thing, takeaway, is to basically say, stop going on forever about 1,000 stories. You know when you ask somebody, oh, how was your trip? And they tell you a story that's not a story. They actually just start listing things to you. They're like, oh, the cruise ship had a buffet, and then there was this thing, and then there was a guy, and you're like, you cannot follow them because they're just listing things. If you organized your talking around a challenge, around a choice that you made, you're like, well, we encountered this unexpected problem, and this is how I made a choice to get over that problem. It's instantly organized. The whole story is much more tight, succinct, together. And so they take you through that structure as well. So highly recommend everybody go through this and look it up. I did it through YouTube a couple times. And it's actually a very good analysis because it forces you to ask yourself your question, why am I doing this? It's a way to analyze yourself and reflect. And the important thing is that your story of self changes over time, because you become wiser over time and you change and your context changes. So it's important to update. It's a practice. It's a leadership practice to say, I'm constantly tuning back in and adjusting and updating my information and my understanding of myself to be more in service of my community, to become more relevant over time. And so your story should become more sophisticated. This is basically what the practice should offer you. In theory. Would you agree? Okay. It's like a superpower. It's a superpower if you get it, yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media, and for more information, check out our website.